This man is a coward in the post-apocalyptic world, but is valued for his ability to make bullets. He was just about to go out with his bodyguards. It was Daryl and Rosita who ambushed him. As long as they capture him, the saviors won't have enough ammunition to wage war. They're taking Eugene back to the Hilltop. Throughout the journey, Daryl and Rosita maintained mostly silent, while Eugene incessantly vented his frustrations. He explained that he had manufactured bullets for the saviors out of necessity for survival. Rosita couldn't stand it any longer and retorted, "I know who you are. You're the one who helped the saviors escape the zombie encirclement before. Everything that happened afterwards, all the lives lost, it's on you." Eugene, however, wasn't willing to accept the blame. Instead, he shifted the responsibility to Rick for leading the resistance that led to the current situation. Rosita's patience snapped. She pointed her gun at Eugene's head and sternly rebuked, "You are unbelievably selfish and a traitor. You've betrayed your only friend in this world, especially Abraham, who protected you. Putting a bullet through your head right now would make the world a better place. The reason we don't kill you is not because we still care about you. It's just that we need the knowledge in your head. Your future involves being locked away in a dark cave. The only chance you'll have to see the sunlight is when we need you to teach us something. So don't worry, we won't kill you. All you want is to stay alive. And you will, but we'll force you to make yourself useful with your pitiful existence." Eugene was left deep in thought, a mix of contemplation and anger on his face. Soon, they reached the spot where the vehicles were parked. However, a few scattered zombies had appeared. Daryl told them to stay put while he took care of them. Seeing Daryl leave, Eugene spotted two zombies approaching from behind through the car window. So he thought of an idea. "Attention all those who are eating." Eugene shoved his fingers into his mouth and forcefully induced a gag reflex, causing vomit to splatter onto Rosita. Rosita was immediately repulsed, her disgust reaching its peak. She was determined to end this jerk. Rosita was blocked by two zombies coming over to her. As Rosita dealt with the zombies, Eugene had already slipped away through a hole. Daryl and Rosita pushed through the wooden door, finding only a pile of ashes. The remnants of a series of footprints were visible on top of the ashes. Daryl shouted for Rosita to follow in this direction. Tracking was Daryl's specialty. They decided to shoot Eugene as soon as they saw him. They couldn't let him go back to making bullets. Unbeknownst to them, Eugene had deliberately left those footprints to lead them in that direction. He was concealed within the ashes. Half an hour later, Eugene returned to the factory, looking disheveled. Negan's other right hand, Regina, had been waiting for him. Seeing Eugene's return, she breathed a sigh of relief. Eugene was Negan's favorite. Regina informed Eugene that Negan had returned safely. Negan was planning to annihilate the Hilltop and had set a trap for Rick and his group. Therefore, Eugene had to provide a substantial amount of bullets to Negan by tomorrow noon. Eugene appeared visibly enraged now, seemingly thoroughly provoked by Daryl and Rosita. Turning to Regina, Eugene said, "Please convey my congratulations to Negan on his return. Assure him that I will provide the bullets and explosives he needs as requested tomorrow." Regina secured the promise and hurried back to Salvation Hall to report to Negan. Eugene then addressed the workers, urging them to produce as many bullets as possible. Exceeding Negan's expectations, they were to aid the saviors in wiping out the Hilltop with a surplus of ammunition. And then Eugene rushed into production. At Salvation Hall, Simon, now a zombie, was tethered to the fence, serving as a guard dog. Negan leaned against the railing, contemplating tomorrow's actions. Negan's walkie-talkie rings, and it's Michonne's voice. Michonne had decided to pass on Carl's letter to Negan after careful consideration. She instructed Negan to stay quiet and began reading the letter aloud. When Carl wrote this letter, the saviors were still surrounded by zombies. So, in the letter, Carl said, "Perhaps you found a way to get out of your predicament by now. When the time comes, there will undoubtedly be a fierce battle between you and my dad, resulting in many deaths. I just want to know if this is what you truly want. Even if you defeat us, you'll still encounter enemies similar to us. Cooperation is the only way out. I've also left a message for my dad, hoping he can talk to you and seek peace. If he comes to you for a conversation, would you be willing to agree?" After hearing the letter, Negan was deeply moved, but he still believed that there was no turning back from the path they had taken.
All this, there is no getting out of it now. See, winning isn't about beating you. Winning is about killing every last one of you. That is starting over. You tell him that. No more talk.
The next morning, Eugene arrived at Salvation Hall with Gabriel. The people here are already busy, because today is the day that the Hilltop will be destroyed. They noticed Dwight, now reduced to a slave. The saviors showed no trace of respect for him. Eugene's purpose for coming here was to deliver the finished bullets. Additionally, he requested that Negan personally inspect the results. Negan took Eugene's pistol with a smile and fired several shots at Rick's dummy. Negan was quite satisfied with Eugene's work. The bullets were practically indistinguishable from the originals. Eugene asked to join Negan's group for the operation, wanting to witness the Hilltop's downfall firsthand. He also suggested Negan adopt a formation for firing in ranks, which could end the battle in under 10 minutes. Negan couldn't refuse Eugene's loyalty. Negan promptly called a team over and handed them a map. Go set up roadblocks at the marked locations on this map. If things go south, fall back to the rendezvous point indicated. The team quickly set off upon receiving Negan's orders. Meanwhile, at the Hilltop, they received intelligence from Dwight about Negan's plan to take his group to the marked locations on the map. However, Rick remained cautious and decided to send a small team to scout first. If it's a trap, it won't be a total loss. They arrived at the marked location on the map through a narrow path. Half an hour later, they spotted a group of the saviors setting up roadblocks using zombies. Carol signaled her companions to stealthily approach from behind. The saviors don't even realize that the Grim Reaper is approaching. Rick quickly brought his men out to see what was going on. One of the saviors narrowly escaped and begged for mercy upon seeing Morgan approach. Unfortunately for him, he encountered the current Morgan. After a thorough search, Ezekiel found a map and a note on one of the men. The map depicted strategic deployments, but it differed from the one Dwight had provided them. It was evidently a trap. The map indicated that the saviors were assembling at the old mill, and Negan was likely there as well. Then Rick radioed Maggie to tell her it was a trap. Negan was currently gathering his forces at the old mill, necessitating a change of plans. They needed to arrive there before the information reached them. However, little did Rick know that this was Negan's true trap. Negan deliberately sent that team to their deaths, leaving behind a misleading map. The real danger lay on their path to the old mill. Gabriel had just learned of Negan's plan, and he was in an anxious state of mind. Taking advantage of the car's evasion of zombies, he opened the door and leaped out. No! Steadying himself, Gabriel headed into the woods, intending to warn Rick and his group about the trap, but due to his vision impairment, Gabriel didn't notice the approaching zombies until they were right in front of him. Just as Gabriel was struggling to hold on, the saviors arrived and dispatched the zombies. Eugene angrily aimed his gun at Gabriel, scolding him not to be foolish, as no one would be able to save him. Gabriel just sighed. Negan also caught up but didn't immediately kill Gabriel. He delivered a punch instead. Negan intended to execute Gabriel in front of the Hilltop community. Rick and Maggie had already rendezvoused, leading the combined forces of the three communities towards the old mill. Meanwhile, back at the Hilltop, a sentry suddenly noticed activity in the distance. The saviors' vehicles were approaching. Most of the people left here are incapable of fighting, as well as the saviors' captives who stayed voluntarily earlier. Tara rushes to organize the residents to leave through the tunnels. Rick and Maggie, members of the three main communities, made their way, but as they walked, loud whistles sounded around them. Everyone is on alert. The whistles are coming from the speakers, so there's no way to see where the enemy is.
How about you step out and face us?
Oh, I am everywhere, Rick. Some more bullhorns, more
Walkies. Pick a direction to run.
You remember your old buddy Eugene?
Well, he is the person that made today possible. Same goes for Dwighty boy here. He's got to go too. We are cleaning house today, Rick. Here we go.
3, 2.
This time, Negan aimed to completely wipe out the Hilltop. Upon Negan's command, the saviors appeared densely packed on the Hilltop. What's going on? The saviors' guns are blowing up. People using rifles were blown up. They were confused. Those using rifles were instantly killed, leaving them bewildered. The Hilltop side was even more confused. They didn't understand what was going on. Quick to react, Rick seized the opportunity, understanding that regardless of the situation, it was a perfect chance to strike back. Negan, looking at his injured hand, realized immediately that Eugene had tampered with the bullets. Gabriel charged at Negan and landed a punch. Negan was essentially defeated at this point. Negan quickly retrieved a baseball bat, preparing to bludgeon Gabriel. From another direction, Dwight charged and slammed Negan against a car, relentlessly pounding him. Negan flung Dwight off and made a swift escape. Meanwhile, Maggie's group had finally reached the hilltop. With the Savior's weapons rendered useless, the battle was heavily one-sided. Inside the hilltop, Tara had managed to lead the remaining people out, guiding them through the woods to safety. The Saviors will be able to track them because of the baby's cries. Tara decided to stay behind and delay the pursuers. Alden offered to stay with Tara, which she initially suspected as a ploy to gain access to weapons. Rick hadn't allowed them to fight, nor were they allowed to carry weapons. Due to a lack of trust, Alden stated that he would stay whether he was given a weapon or not. After that, Alden asked the other Saviors if any of them wanted to stay, and most of them did. Tara was touched and said nothing more, and dropped the gun pouch on her back. Then the group waited in the woods for the Saviors to come after them. Soon, the Saviors arrived. Tara was preparing to give the order to open fire when an explosion occurred on the Savior's side. Tara was puzzled and quickly went out to investigate. It turned out that the group of women who had been living by the seaside had also arrived. Aaron had been persuading them since his departure. Meanwhile, the other battlefield was nearing its end. Most of the Saviors were now dead or wounded, leaving only a small group surrendering helplessly. Today, there was no escape for them, and they understood that their time was up. Facing the surrendered Saviors, Maggie's group naturally refrained from killing them. Only Negan remained to be dealt with. Meanwhile, Rick was tracking Negan. Upon hearing gunshots, Negan took cover behind a tree, his gunshot wound causing excruciating pain. Negan looked back and realized Rick had run out of bullets, and they were fighting. Rick was hit in the stomach by Negan's bat. However, Negan's baseball bat was knocked out of his hand by Rick. Negan kicks Rick a few times, leaving him defenseless. Negan regained his weapon and prepared to finish Rick off. Although the Saviors had lost, Negan refused to concede defeat. Facing Rick, Negan said, "Let me tell you something. It was all bullshit in the Grove. I'd already made my choice in my mind. If it wasn't for not wanting to kill a father in front of his kid, you'd have been dead long ago. Now, it seems killing you back then would have been the right choice. Carl might still be alive." Just as Negan was about to make his move, Rick kicked him to the ground.
I'll get out of it. I always do. It's just you and me, Rick. And I got a bet. I am better.
Just give me 10 seconds so I can tell you how.
No.
Carl said it doesn't have to be a fight anymore.
He was wrong.
The war came to an end. Rick had won, though not in the most honorable way, but he had won nonetheless. In that moment, Rick thought of his son and all his dead friends. The others gathered behind Rick to witness his vengeance on Negan. After much contemplation, Rick made a decision that many wouldn't understand.
Save him.
No! Maggie!
We have to.
We have to end it! Rick! It's not over till he's dead! No!
Rick addressed the crowd. All the prisoners who raised their hands, put them down. They're going home now. Negan was alive, but his reign was over. Those who couldn't accept that would pay the price. Rick's intention was to foster consensus despite differences, eliminating class divisions and focusing on the common enemy, the distant zombies. There was no need for internal conflicts. Unity was the key to survival. A new world was about to begin, and Rick hoped everyone would strive together for a better future. What Rick did may not be understood by many, even by the audience. This thing is over. Morgan also removed his armor, which belonged to Benjamin, and asked Carol to pass it on to Henry, and then Morgan left. In the end, Rick assigned people to take over Salvation Hall, intending to transform it into something completely different from Negan's regime. A car drove into the woods, and Daryl arrived with Dwight at the outskirts. Dwight understands what this means. It's time for him to pay his debts. Dwight deeply apologized to Daryl before kneeling down. It was enough for Dwight to see Negan's throat slit. Unexpectedly, Daryl tossed the car keys to Dwight. Daryl, a man of few words, sternly warned Dwight to leave and threatened to act if he ever returned. Before leaving, Daryl urged Dwight to find Sherry, with a single purpose from that point on. Dwight returned to his pre-apocalyptic home, where Sherry had left him a letter. As for whether Dwight ultimately found his wife, viewers could find out in Fear the Walking Dead Season 5. Meanwhile, Morgan arrived at the junkyard and informed Jotties that the saviors were done for. Rick was preparing to establish a new order, inviting anyone who wished to participate. Since the end of the season, Morgan lived here in seclusion from human strife because he didn't want to kill anymore. Fear the Walking Dead Season 4, Episode 9 elaborates on Morgan's journey afterward as he encounters another group of survivors. Negan, too, was saved from death. Rick directly told Negan that they wouldn't kill him, but his life ahead would be spent behind bars.